This is your candidate for 7th Senate seat in Ohio, Rodney Ham. And I wanted to go over some things today as far as this white supremacist campaign that Trump has ran. Personally, I have been around quite a few white supremacists. And like I said, you have those type, that element in every race. But I have been diverse enough to be able to work in the inner city as well as grow up in the country. So I have a pretty broad spectrum of America. Today is significant for me because I had one of the worst experiences that I ever had with a white supremacist. And what he did was, as the district manager of the company and promoted to vice president of the company, was he sat down with me and punished me, really, for not listening to some of his directives when it came to who to hire and who to fire in times of turmoil, which were skeptical times of turmoil because of something that happened on this day in 2010. And he wanted to, I guess, show his superiority when it came to the fact that at the end of the issue, the individual decided to side with me over his neighbor, who was a butcher named Richard in Kettering at Kroger. And so when all that took place over a 36-month span, basically, there was a lot of turmoil that came up, and he started to hint around about some of his Trump beliefs to me, and me being a person who grew up in a family with a lot of diversity, I wasn't listening to him. And the more intense it got as we went along, until finally he sat me down on the day he transferred me to Chester Road in Cincinnati, Sharonville, and told me he was a one-percenter who did basically bounty hunter type activities after he got out of the military as an explosives expert in Miami, Florida, and hunted down what he called stolen drugs and drug money for his brother in the Miami area. And from what I understand, the last name is Wise. So as we had this conversation, there was nothing I could do. Like I said, he was on his way to getting promoted to vice president of the company. And so he moved me, even though I lived in Beaver Creek, all the way down to the Cincinnati area off 275 on Sharon Road. And when I got there, he started to implement his little, I call it the plankton complex, of how he was over his boss now. And things got really strange in the company. But I had to move out tomorrow to a place called Osceola Road. And I went from being in the somewhat diverse Beaver Creek area, even though there was a shooting at Walmart involving a minority, to the guts of white supremacy and basically the home of the Ku Klux Klan. And when you're down in Morrow, you'll start to understand the mentality is so much different because they're so secure in their belief system that they don't care to have a drinking spot, and it's either the Eagles or VFW, I can't remember, where in order to become a member, you have to sign a sheet saying you will not sit with or bring blacks to the establishment. You won't share beers with them. And that can be verified through their paperwork because it's part of the sign-in sheets. So you can imagine how difficult that is for me, especially when I have so many people that I'm close to that are minorities. And at this time, my best friend was a female. She was my assistant. She was black, who kept me posted on some of the activities that went on when they were trying to get rid of their black drivers, their black salesmen, and trying to get the store as white as they could get it. there by a big university, where he received season tickets to overlook a white privileged athlete who had some baggage that showed up at our store, and we were going to have him arrested before I left. And he didn't press charges, and the athlete went on to later get in trouble by Montgomery County. So I'm trying to understand all of this. What I didn't understand at the time was that these one percenters or Aryan Brotherhood types were going to be the ones to try to take over the White House. And I did have some conversations with people, I've got some people in my family that are that way, that were telling me that they were on the inside track of something big. And I started to hear things, which I wrote about in my past posts. I started to hear things, and they would come through the television or the computer, and it would be an audio, And then I started to notice some messages, like the way that a flag would be placed, or messages at the Trump camps with T-shirts. You would see the same color T-shirt 3 rows back, and then another one, and then another one, and they would have sentences on them. Stop the, whatever. And they would start to use this military-style codes to talk through numbers and colors. And like I said, if you go back and look at it, I'll try to repost it. I've got I think it's 4 or 5 pages on it. But I had seen this stuff as a child a little bit, something familiar to me about it, which was the Stars and Stripes broadcast from 700 WLW down on Western Row and Butler Warren Row, where the garage doors and stuff would open because the transmitters were so powerful, being that it was a military radio station. So I did have some conversations later on with some people, and the more they started to try to explain their white side of things to me, the more I started to fight back a little bit, until I started receiving threats from people like local politicians and their families. I had one so bold as to send me a picture with a lady named, I'll call her Mrs. Crow, but in the picture they try to depict their city or place they live in, which is Hillsboro, Ohio, as Mauryville, and that's in direct relation to my son's name. So they're fairly serious about their ability to threaten. I've been around a lot of Cocker Spaniels before, and I'm not that concerned with it. Although most of my family died in the past few years, and I've heard a lot of little snide comments from people, even causing me to get in a fist fight with my best friend. I only really associated with 2 people, and I ended both relationships because of this Trump euphoria that they started to feel. They would watch things on the internet which were directives or statements, mission statements from leadership in the Ku Klux Klan, and a lot of the voices would sound similar to some of your oil companies, some of your fuel companies' leadership, in a mocking style, to let you know the kind of power that they had here in Warren County, which is intimidating, which is what they're trying to do. It's what they do in prisons. They try to intimidate the younger or the newer prisoners, and they try to press down on them until they're a member of their outfit and doing the grunt work, if you will. Over in Franklin, Ohio, Waynesville football player graduate Chad was prospecting for a motorcycle gang that used to be called the Hollywood Knights, and approached me about some of the different benefits of it. And I told him I've been around it my whole life, and me and Mike know each other, and me and Mike know the best thing for us to do is not really probably be around each other too much. There was an incident after that involved a girl named Hope, and she was working over there at one of the establishments. I'll call it the Wash Your Money bar, that closed down. And there's a Walmart there with a Murphy Oil out front in significance to Louisville, Kentucky. And they ended up getting in trouble, not for theft, because this is not how they do things. They're trying to finance these campaigns as large as they can for the Ku Klux Klan's support of Donald Trump. And what they did was they had people come in with smocks on that didn't even work at Walmart and start stealing televisions out of the back of the Walmart and several other high-end electronics right there in Franklin, Ohio. And when I seen Chad, he was loaded down with gift cards, 6 or 7 television sets. So he was participating in a conspiracy that was funding the campaign of Donald Trump through Richard Jones in Butler County. Those things are covered, and that's the great thing about the United States of America. Those things are covered under the Patriot Act, which I wish would be looked at. It comes in handy at this time to use, but for the majority of the time, I think it should be redone. But as it states today, you cannot participate in funding a terrorist organization. And when they broke into the White House on 600 Pennsylvania Avenue, that's a terrorist act, and they had announced the intent to kill people and take it over and kidnap people. So when we take the Patriot Act and we go through some of the hierarchies of some of these white supremacist organizations, we're going to have to make a statement to these young white kids who grew up in those houses that you're not Michael Jordan. You're not Tiger Woods. You're not the Williams sisters. You're not Denzel Washington. You're not even Jay-Z. So I don't understand where it is in this society that these white kids think they're number one far and away. Who's the best president that you've had in the past quite a few years? It's Barack Obama. He brought an excitement and a new hope to the White House. Now, the issue is that these white kids who believe in this mentality are going to turn around like Richard Jones did and start attacking our Hispanic population because that's what they are. They're coyotes out in the wilderness trying to survive with this mentality that is not good enough for them to survive on. So they fuel their ego or their missing self-respect factors by bullying and building themselves up to be more than what they are. It's bad for America. It's really bad for white America because they're such a small percentage of who we are, and they're out here trying to represent us in the media and on TV because of these little cliques that run around and hire their buddies for the jobs, like you have at Warren County Courts. You have a lot of people who refer people to jobs. And that's why I brought up the Charlie Morgan of the probation department story, which I have to believe is true because he was a religious man who had no business being in charge of people being released from jail. He has no sociology classes, no psychology classes. He has no kind of education in the human services department. And to be honest about it, his religious influence and his religious beliefs cause him to play favorites with people and talk to judges who are friends of his now and get them released early from jail, which actually resulted in a woman getting killed by her boyfriend because he was part of that whole circle there that made the decision to release this man early for Christmas, and he left and killed his wife or girlfriend on Christmas. You cannot have favoritism in politics. You cannot have favoritism in courthouses, and you can't have favoritism in media. And that's where we're starting to have some real issues with these Rupert Murdoch and Ted Turner campaigns out here. And it happens on both sides of the fence. We have to take a close look at how we prosecute these white supremacists. It's the most important thing that we've ever done in this country. And it has to come from middle America. It has to come from the working class, the people who are out here busting their butts every day, trying to raise families in this American environment, who enjoyed watching America celebrate its diversity with Barack Obama as president, and didn't feel the least bit proud to see the Democratic headquarters of Steve Wilson of 7th District have manure dumped on them and pig manure mixed with mulch at that to put a stain on Muslims and put a stain on the name Barack Obama, who had just won presidency. And then they turn around and did it again. And I would be interested to go back and see if they're part of that clique and what their punishment was for such an atrocious act. This is Ham going ham. I'll be doing it all the time because I love this country. I love my children. And these bullies from these white supremacist organizations need to be held accountable. It's time for politicians to step up. Don't worry about partisanship. Do the right thing. There can't be a Republican in the entire country that doesn't think that Franklin Delano Roosevelt was one of the greatest presidents of all time, with all the issues that he had to bring resolution to, being that he was handicapped, being he was disabled, and being that he had one of the great first ladies in Eleanor Roosevelt. Stop white power.